but there was a lot of pressure on Major League Baseball to move the All-Star game out of Atlanta because of a voting law that was recently passed there. And the law is getting a lot of backlash, at least on social media and stuff, because it requires you to have an ID for absentee ballots. Nothing new. 35 other states do the same thing. But the claim is that is particularly racist because it targets African Americans. So with that being said, you had a lot of people coming out and they were saying, hey, look, we can't have this here. If this is going on, we need to move this game. And I thought to myself all week when I heard that was potentially, I was like, man, Major League Baseball, they got to step up and say no to this because this is a city that has already planned on this. They've got everything in place for this, and ripping it away would be a disservice. To me, it doesn't prove any type of point that they are now going through with this, but they are. And I wanted to read this quote from the Georgia governor, Brian Kemp. And to me, I think he might have really hit the head here. Hit the nail on the head here. He said, quote, "That's the thing about Major League Baseball. It was never about what was in the law. It was about the same with Delta and Coca-Cola. It was about how much political pressure they were getting that they could not actually stand up to these activists, board members, or other individuals from high-profile people that were protesting them," unquote. So he looks at this, and I think that when I say he's right, here's why. Because many companies and now sports leagues bow down and cave to anyone who calls out something they do because they fear losing sponsorship. And when they lose sponsorship, they lose money. Plain and simple. That's what it is. And I have to think that if there were any real justification, it's not actual justification, but any attempt at justification, that's what Major League Baseball would say. Jason Hayward came out the other day, Major League Baseball player, and admitted that it was less than 50 guys that were on the call with Rob Manfred who insisted the game be moved. Less than 50 players came out and said that, and that's the issue right there. It never has to be a majority anymore. As long as a few people really get together and they complain, that's all it seems to take anymore, and it will never, ever end until companies and organizations refuse to acknowledge just how ridiculous complaints from a few people are. It's absolutely absurd. As I said earlier, Rob Manfred is a coward. He is a coward. Always has been. We saw that on full display with the Astros when it actually came to baseball. He didn't do anything. This was the same thing. When you take it away from Atlanta, you are taking away $100 million that was going to be generated in revenue here. As I talked to you about previously this year, Atlanta had already said by that time they were expecting full stadium for the All-Star weekend, with small businesses opening back up, with what if they survived with what happened with COVID. If they make it to that point, they were expecting a big-time boost here. Now that's being ripped away for absolutely ridiculous reasons. I think this is unbelievably absurd. It makes no sense. I believe there's a false narrative being pushed behind all of this, and you want to push the whole idea of we want to be inclusive and we want to help everybody out that we can with Major League Baseball. We want to promote equality. We want to promote black businesses. All that. Look what you're doing. Atlanta is a prominently black area, and you are taking it away from them, from their small businesses. $100 million is out the window right now. I don't think that was ever even considered. And it just blows my mind that we're still continuing to have to go through things like this. You remember back when the NBA All-Star Game did the same thing in Charlotte, right? They removed it because of a law they didn't agree with. I mean, this right here with Major League Baseball, to me, is beginning to set pretty dangerous precedent. And look, they may be trying to say that they're inclusive, but by moving it because you disagree with something, that seems like the opposite of inclusive to me. You're basically saying, well, if you're not on board with this, we're not going to be involved. But I'm telling you right now, this is the same reason when you look at what the Redskins did by changing their name. The Indians, the same way. They look at everything that they had being threatened against them. Sponsorship being pulled out. Lots of money being lost. And even if that isn't the case initially, they fear that will happen down the line, so they try to get out ahead of it. You mix that in with a few people complaining that it's a bad thing, that it's a big deal. And to me, with what they said with their explanation of why they're doing this, they didn't even read into the law. I mean, it's not, you have to have an ID to do anything. You're telling me that you shouldn't have to have one to vote? Really? We saw what happened this year in the elections. It was unbelievable. If there ever was a discussion on voters and ID, it was this year, right? That topic was elevated beyond extent. But this is nothing that is suppressing anybody. You can go in and get an ID. You have to have one if you want to legally drive. If you want to buy any type of liquor, you go down the list of everything you have to do. And as I said, 35 other states already have this. This isn't a big deal. So it's really. I mean, I'm like you. I want to be like, oh man, this is shocking that it's still happening, but it's not. At this point, you get any type of backlash, any type of threat, and it seems like you're going to cave. But I have to think too, with Major League Baseball, it's at another level because Rob Manfred is such a coward. He will bow to anybody. He will never do the right thing. We've seen that consistently. He's been given every chance to do the right thing when it comes to handing out punishments, when it comes to not handing out punishments, when it comes to this. All he had to do was step up and say, look, this is where it was. And I have to give credit to the Braves organization because they came out with their statement and they were not like, we completely understand all this. No, they came out, they were like, we're disappointed. We're completely disappointed in this because we had everything set up the exact same way that we had hoped it would go down this year with a full capacity. Tourism was going to go through the roof with all the money that was going to be available. These businesses were going to hopefully get back to having a chance to thrive and make up for everything they lost during COVID. So we are absolutely disappointed. They even said in their release that we wanted to use this event as an opportunity to highlight equality when it comes to voting and all of that. And it would have been a good chance to do so. But guess what? It's gone. They don't even get that opportunity because you have a bunch of spineless cowards that are leading up there at the top like Rob Manfred. That's what I get out of this. It's unbelievable. The fact that when I read that Jason Hayward said less than 50 guys, that kind of tells you where we are right now. We saw it here locally. Remember when Eskimo Joe's had their whole thing going on? There were 2 or 3 people that had come out online and were like, that's racist. You can't say Eskimo. And I give credit to Eskimo Joe's for being one of the few places you see that were like, we don't care. Go away. It was great.
If Stan Clark, I fully believe that if Stan Clark would have changed the name, they would have gone out of business. I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think Eskimo Joe's would have survived.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. That's why you have there's these battles being waged in that idea of changing names and changing mascots and cancel culture and all this. And the more you fight, the more you have a chance to win because those people that do come out and want it to happen rarely expect you to actually push back. They want to be the ones doing all the pushing. So when they do get pushed back, they usually get pretty silent pretty quickly.